be a little bit stiff sometimes.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to ACMI. My name is Arieh Offman. I'm a public programmer and video games curator here. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that today's talk takes place on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, to any First Nations people in the audience, and to all those watching at home. Well, as I said again, welcome to ACMI and RMIT Games Talk series, proudly presented by our partners at the RMIT University. This year, specifically, we wanted to focus on game making, but game making as an artistic practice. So through some in-depth conversations with practitioners, like the one we have here beside me at the top of their field, Games Talks will offer insights into the wide range of creative practices, motivations, and expertise that exist within video game development. So can I please get you all to put your hands together for our guest of the evening, Olivia Haines. Olivia is an artist and an independent game developer who moved to Melbourne to study at RMIT's game design course. She specialises in creating cute and vibrant 3D art and vignette-style games with a reflective, nostalgic atmosphere. She's made several free games since graduating in 2017 and is currently embarking on her first commercial games project, Surf Club, since securing funding from Screen Victoria. So, Olivia, let's go back to the beginning. Tell us about your early experiences with video games and what were you passionate about? What did you absolutely love?
So I was one of those kids that was really obsessed with games. Like that was, like my main hobby is that I would just spend my time on the PlayStation, on the computer. I had seen a few games as like a really young kid and none really grabbed my attention until one day my dad came home with the new iMac and it had this game called Bugdom on it. And I think that was like the moment my brain woke up. Like I can't really remember anything before that moment, just Bugdom. And it was this game where you play as a bug and it's like an adventure game, it's 3D. And it's very simple, but it was just so cute. And I think something about, like a 3D game like that that's like an adventure was just so captivating to me. And so I was very interested in this game and it was like all I thought about. And then not long after that I got a PlayStation and I got Spyro, and that was really when like games like solidified as like a thing that I love in my brain. I think it was the exploration element of it, where it was similar to Bugdom in that, you explore a 3D world, but it was so much more expanded. The game is like designed for exploration. The mechanics, it's all, you could tell the developers just wanted to make a world to explore, like how you can fly and how you can look around in every direction. And, the worlds are also just full of secrets. It kind of rewards exploration and just really getting to know the game, basically. So I found that just really captivating. And from that point on, I was just like very interested in the games similar to that.
So was it the specific type of game that attracted you, like that adventure style of game, or was it the characters and their abilities, the art style? Like what really drew you to them?
I think it was a mix of both. I think it was, I liked the fantasy element and I've always liked very cute things, like characters with really like big eyes. And so that was part of it. And the adventure side of it. I think like when you're a kid, there's something just very captivating about exploring like a digital world. You know what I mean?
I definitely know what you mean. I think similarly, some of the games that first attracted me, like was those ideas of that open world and the amazing things that you could do within that space. It was so different to the one that I lived in day to day.
Yeah, and I think also when you're a kid, you're always filling in the gaps. Like I know in Spyro, sometimes I remember fixating on, there was this one boss fight where you can see like a little island in the distance and it's just like a decoration in the scene, but I remember a friend and I, we obsessed over this like little island thinking like, oh, there's got to be like a way to get there, and that's how you like unlock, like Spyro's brother or whatever we made up.
So again, looking at your earlier years, but this time going forward a little bit, I mean, your passion as an artist and your skills as an artist really began to develop in your teen years.
Yeah.
With an art style that's a little bit different to what people might be familiar with today, and with particular love for anime and JRPGs. So, like, take us back to this time. Tell us about your inspirations, the things you're obsessed with that you loved, and then your journey and progression as an artist.
Yeah. So I was always drawing as a kid, but I sort of started to take it very seriously when sort of near the end of primary school, a couple of things happened. I got really into Pokemon, and the internet was becoming more accessible. So Pokemon sort of led me to discovering YouTube, which led me to discovering anime, which led me to discovering DeviantArt. And then that became my whole life, basically. Once I got my own computer at age 13, it's like all I would do when I wasn't at school was draw. And yeah, post my drawings online.
And what were some of your favourite anime from the time? Like, we can see that obviously your earlier work has definite anime influences. So what were your favourites?
Like Tokyo Mew Mew, Cardcaptor Sakura, Chobits, like, what are they called? Yeah, a lot of shoujos from like the early 2000s. Those were some of the biggest ones. Anything cute with like a pink-haired protagonist.
Yep. And I think we can see like some follow through, like with that idea of exploring worlds then and going into JRPGs, which obviously can be some of the most expansive worlds and the longest worlds that you can explore. So, what about your experience with JRPGs? What did you love about them, and like, are they still a big influence in your life?
I think it was the sort of, I guess they feel very much like art-driven games. Obviously, they're usually very mechanic-heavy, but the characters are always very lively, and there's a lot of world building that goes into them. And yeah, I think I just like that. And like, a lot of JRPGs are very like sincere, like often in a really corny way. Like, you know, something like Kingdom Hearts, like people like roast it, but it's very, you know, it wears its heart on its sleeve, and it's very genuine in what it is. And I think that just makes those kinds of games very endearing to me. And so I am a very nostalgic person, and those games I feel like often lean into that. Like, they have this very nostalgic feeling. It's hard to describe, I think, yeah.
I totally understand what you mean, because there is that earnestness sometimes to the writing and to the character development that is pretty unique to that style of game, and will either attract you and repel you.
Yeah.
So let's get into your career as a game developer. I mean,
Yeah.
what do you think is particularly unique about video games as an art form, and what attracted you to, like, specifically given that you do digital art, that you do a variety of different kinds of art, what attracted you to video games as your art form and as your career path?
Well, I think what attracts me to games is, you know, coming from a background where I was drawing a lot, you know, games allowed me to add, you know, an extra dimension to my game, like literally, and also, you know, I could really expand upon any idea I had, you know, and I think people could, I realized once I started making games that people could actually like connect to my art more, where it's like, I think people, you know, I would get positive feedback about my work from, you know, friends and family, but it wasn't until I started translating my images into, you know, 3D spaces that you could explore that I think people were really drawn to what I was doing. And so, yeah, I think that's what's appealing to me. It's that it allows you to just expand upon ideas more, like, in, you know, mechanically, and yeah, I don't know. Does that make sense?
It definitely does.
Yeah.
How important to you is interactivity as an element? Because your games have different levels of interactivity.
Yeah.
Some of them, like, well, might be like almost a bit of a walking simulator type thing, for lack of a better term, because I hate that term.
Yeah.
But and some of them have more. So how important is that to you?
it's sort of important. I've sort of gone in and out of thinking about how important it is to me. You know, like when I started making games, I got a lot of like negative feedback of, you know, the people saying like, oh, you know, this looks cool, but you can see everything within like a minute of like walking around, and that used to really bug me. But I began to sort of realize that I like the idea of games as like sort of more installation pieces. I started making games because I was very inspired by things that were happening at Bar SK, you know, games that were just on display and you could pick up a controller and move around a bit and then put it down and just sort of have it displayed. And so, yeah, as I started making my own games more, I started to lean into that more. You know, still having a bit of interactivity, but still, I guess, being true to what I wanted in games, yeah.
Yeah, because I think that that's a really interesting area to look at, specifically with, you know, art games, experimental practice, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I guess what attracts you to that more now than it does to, say, working within a big AAA development firm or more commercial practice? Like, what about being a solo developer, experimenting with games as a medium, excites you as an artist?
Well, I mean, because I don't work AAA, I don't have to worry about whether a game sells or something, and I don't have any strict deadlines with the projects I'm doing. Like even with Surf Club now, it's like I don't have to get it done with any particular time. Like obviously I don't want to spend my whole life on it, but I can just kind of feel things out, and if something isn't working, I can try and explore and figure out why instead of like really sticking to a schedule. And so I think I appreciate that because making games is really hard, and you often do need a lot of time and you're not actually making a game, and you need to just sit and think about it. And this image is just all like notes that I take on games. I don't really make concept art for my games. I usually try and plan them out just through writing diary entries, basically, like a stream of consciousness, thinking about what I want to actually get out of a project. And I feel like that takes up a lot of my development time. Whereas if I was working for a big studio, I don't think they would really vibe with that.
Do you think it allows you to tell, like, or explore more personal ideas?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, a lot of the time when I'm making a game, like half of it goes into figuring out what I want to say, like what I personally want to get out of it.
Okay, I think that leads us like kind of nicely into the next part, which is I want you to talk us a bit through your creative practice. So you've mentioned a bit about like not a lot of concept art and that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
which I think might surprise some people like listening and watching. Given, look, as when we sort of first spoke, I think the first thing that jumped out to me was that you have a very like a unique and recognisable visual aesthetic to your work,
Yeah.
and potentially a lot of people might think that that's where you start. So take us through your process for creating a game. Where do you start? How does it go?
Well, my process starts with often I will fixate on something, whether it's like a theme or a subject matter or like an art style, like a particular color palette or something, and I want to make a game based on that. And so, I'll do like really rough sketches, but I usually just go straight into 3D because I find, like blocking things out in 3D because I find it can be hard to get an idea of what something's going to actually look like in a space through just concept art. So usually, like, I just find it's a bit of a waste of time. I'd rather just feel things out in Unity or in 3D. I usually like to have some sort of point that I'm trying to get across in the games. You don't have to, obviously, but I like to try and use it as a chance to discover something about myself or sort of imprint a part of my life onto a game. I like the idea of games that I can sort of look back on and think, oh, that's what I was going through at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do sort of a lot of writing, or I'll do like bullet points of like some things that I might want to get out of a game to try and like solidify it so it doesn't get too blurred, I guess. And it's not necessarily a point A to point B thing. Like it'll often be a lot of backwards and forwards. Like I'll start making the game and then I'll be like, oh no, this isn't right. And I'll like start writing more. And yeah, it can be very messy. Yeah, I'll do a lot of things like this where I'm like, I'll write like a big, like pages of like a diary entry of like stream of consciousness, and then I'll be like, okay, like what am I actually doing? And then I'll try and like summarize it a bit more, and think about what I want someone to feel from playing my game. You know, not just what I want to get out of it, but what I want, how I'm going to translate my ideas.
Yeah, totally. So when you, let's say you've got this initial idea for a game, something that you want to put across, is like, and you said it's not a straightforward process. Is that something that you need to do like quite quickly, or is it that, you know what, you have lots of ideas, and they might sit there and germinate in a notebook for 4 years, and then you'll come back to them and go, wait, this is the right one for the right time?
It usually happens quite quickly because I'll usually think like, oh, I've really got this really good idea. I reckon I could make it in a week. Like, you know, just do that, and then I'll usually end up, you know, procrastinating on actual work and like, you know, doing this instead. So it's usually a pretty quick thing where I'll get fixated and it'll sort of come to me and I'll be like, oh, I can do that like in this amount of time.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So we're going to go back to one of your earlier games, Dollhouse, which got quite a lot of recognition at the time. Take us through like your inspiration for it. What did you want to achieve with it, and take us through your processes for it?
So I made Dollhouse about a year after I'd finished uni, and when I finished uni, that was sort of around the time where I was struggling a lot with figuring out what I wanted to get out of games. You know, I was getting a lot of the feedback of, you know, like, this is cool, but like, you know, you can't do anything, or you see everything like within 10 seconds of opening it kind of thing. And Dollhouse was more ambitious than games I'd made before then, but it was still within the realm of what I was comfortable with. And I think I really wanted to make something that solidified a style that I wanted. You know, I was, getting a lot of feedback that games can't be, you know, this kind of way, that I need to try and like work out what my games have that is special kind of thing. And then Dollhouse was sort of the point where I was like, you know, I don't care anymore. I got to just try and push through this. And the visual style was just that I had gotten a lot of good, like, people really seemed to like that my games were very pink and very cute.
Yep.
And I decided to just go all out on that, like not hold back kind of thing.
Yeah, because they do have, like, for want of a better word, they do have a very feminine aesthetic to it. They are quite cute. But you have, like, you can see in this quite a significant transition from your earlier Japanese or anime style work to this 3D work.
Yeah.
What other inspiration did you draw for your art at this time?
Like toys. I was very interested in as I was trying to think about what my games can be, I started to see them more as toys, and that sort of helped me reframe things in my mind of like, oh, you know, like, it can just be a little interactive experience. And I mean, toys were very big to me, like growing up, obviously. And I think that also meant that things were kind of easy to model. It wasn't too intensive in that realm. I knew how to make things look kind of plasticky in Unity, so like, you know, it kind of just lended itself. Those were kind of main inspirations, just trying to see games as toys and seeing where that kind of thought process would take me.
I think, it's interesting you talked about, like, the negative feedback you received about, you know, the amount of time that people would spend in your game, etc. I think a lot of people are actually now leaning into shorter game experiences, particularly because we are time poor, and it gives us the chance to experience these bite-sized moments. And so,
Yeah, and I think like it's not that I was dismissing that feedback. I did sort of take it and think about it, but it got to a point where it was holding me back and it was making me feel very self-conscious of my work. And so Dollhouse was sort of like I needed to just kind of push through it and make something and sort of figure out, how that could be potentially a strength for me. Yeah.
So let's move on to another project of yours, one from the last couple of years, and I think one that a lot of people have it's resonated quite closely with, which is Terracotta. So look, it's a really moving, it's a really personal game. And again, it spoke to a lot of people throughout what's been a really tough time over the last couple of years. So just tell us about your time developing this game.
Yeah, so Terracotta was like a weird experience, and it's kind of like developing it is kind of a blur to me because I was going on a lot of walks and I was really just trying to make the most of the lockdown. Like this was like May/June when I made it. And I was really trying to stay connected with my thoughts so that I would sort of stay sane during the whole experience. And I was, journaling a lot to try and like work through the negative feelings that I was having, and going on a lot of walks around, the area I was living, like St. Kilda kind of area. And yeah, I wanted to make something that had the look of like St. Kilda and Melbourne because I was thinking, I like making games that reflect where I am in my life. And then it kind of evolved into me using that as a way to try and express how I was feeling about the pandemic at the time. But as I was going through that process of writing out my thoughts and trying to give the game like a point, I realized it was too difficult for me. Like I didn't know how I felt about it at the time, and that's kind of what Terracotta ended up being about. It's that, sometimes things are just rough and you don't necessarily have an answer. Like I felt like the game needed to have some sort of conclusion, and then I realized that would be just kind of forcing a weird message or something. And yeah, it just kind of ended up being about the struggle of going through something that it's just so unpredictable, and you can only do what you can each day to cope with it. Yeah,
and definitely something that nothing in life could have prepared us for beforehand. What kind of feedback did you receive from people with the game? Were people did they respond well to it to you?
Yeah, people responded really well. I was really surprised, and I got a lot of messages on it of people saying, people telling me how they've been struggling and stuff, which was really sweet. I never thought I'd make something that would affect people like that. I think people thought my work was cute and stuff, but I didn't think that people gave it too much more thought beyond that before I made Terracotta. So it was nice to have that balance of something that looks really nice, but that I was able to successfully get some of my feelings across with it.
Definitely look at it. It is a really moving work. It was actually some of the ACMI people's favourite game of the year that year. So yeah. So we've talked a bit now about your solo works, your self-funded works, your shorter works. But a couple of years ago, you have received some funding. A year ago?
Yeah.
From Screen Vic for your first commercial game, Surf Club.
Yeah.
So tell us, first of all, a little bit about the grant process, because I think we'd like to know how did you approach that? How difficult was it? And what advice and tips would you have for people wanting to go through a similar process and getting funded?
So the process started with after uni. I tried freelancing for a bit, doing 3D art for local studios or just wherever I could, basically. And I realized I didn't really like freelancing. And at the same time, I was making my own games. I was making Dollhouse and I was making a few others, and those were getting positive feedback. And I was aware that, living in Victoria meant that I had these options to me. A lot of other people I knew were getting funding from Screen Victoria. And I just thought, like, why don't I like try and do something like this as well? Like, why don't I try and figure out a concept for maybe a commercial game and see if I can get funding for it? So I stopped doing freelancing. I got just a part-time job at a restaurant, and I started dedicating my free time to just planning out a game idea. And I had a rough idea. Like, I knew I wanted to make something set in Queensland, like where I grew up. And then the story I spent that time working out the story. I knew I wanted to make something that was about like nostalgia as like a core theme, because I think throughout my whole, teen years and early adulthood, it's like nostalgia played like a very big part in my life, like moving away from home. I dealt with a lot of homesickness, like getting used to what relationships sort of become once you finish high school, like, that whole young adult kind of life process. And that's sort of how Surf Club came to be. The funding process, I don't know if it was like difficult. It was just more like, I had to really try and solidify like what I was doing. But I didn't feel too nervous just because I knew so many people that had gone through it with Screen Victoria, so I didn't have a lot of anxieties. It felt like I knew everyone already, and so I knew that even if I didn't get it, it wouldn't be a negative experience. Yeah.
Great. And we've got quite a few people in this room who have been funded by Screen Vic in the past. Look, I know a lot of people are eagerly anticipating this. So tell us a bit about what Surf Club is. Tell us if you can give us a sneak peek of the narrative and where it's going.
Yeah, so Surf Club is about a girl named Holly who's in her early 20s, and the game is about her returning to her hometown to try and rekindle an old relationship with someone that she was with when she was a teenager. And the game is about her sort of reconnecting with the town and her previous partner, and during that process, she begins to get kind of clouded with the nostalgia of it all, and sort of, the lines between the past and the present begin to blur together, and so the game is sort of set between both the present and the past, and things will, interactions or conversations or places she goes to will trigger a memory, and I guess it's sort of about how the past can give you rose-coloured glasses, and the game is about her learning to, I guess, decipher the difference between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And look, you've mentioned already that the way you work, you don't necessarily feel pressured, I suppose, to finish by certain deadlines and those kind of things. So where are you at with the game at the moment? When can we maybe expect it?
So even though I don't have any deadlines, I do hope the game will be out by late next year. At the moment, it's sort of in a hiatus phase because I've been sort of starting like other jobs, and now that the pandemic is like over, COVID's over, I've been like going out more and trying to upskill in other areas, and not just like, I spent the last 2 years just like at home, like working on the game, and
maybe need a little break from it before you can wrap it up, or look at it with fresh lenses?
Yeah, I think like I was 23 when I was pretty new to the games industry when the pandemic started, and now I'm trying to use this time to sort of just get out there a bit more and like get a few other jobs, and I
think that's a pretty common experience now after being almost locked down for 2 years. I guess the last thing I want to get to on Surf Club is, again, this is your first commercial game. How has that changed your approach as a developer, knowing that it's going to be a commercial product as opposed to something that you're maybe experimenting with as an art project or as a solo project? I mean, given that this is solo as well, but yeah.
Well, this is the first game where I've actually done like concept art and more thorough planning, because part of it has been learning to communicate with other people. Like my musician Ellie that I work with, it's been my job to communicate my ideas. I can't just be like, with my old games, it's like in the time that it would take me to tell someone what I'm trying to do with it, I could finish the game. So that's sort of influenced that's been influenced by the fact that it's a commercial game. It's that, I want to make sure I do more thorough planning, because, if people are paying money for a game, like I want to respect that kind of thing, and I want to make sure I'm giving them a quality product.
Sure.
So yeah, a lot more planning, a lot more just thoroughly thinking about everything instead of being a bit more like la-di-da.
I'm sure everyone listening and watching is as eager as I am to see when it finally does come out. It's okay, I'm going to go a little bit off book with a question. Given that most of the games that we've seen from you have been solo projects, I wanted maybe to talk a little bit about Escape, because I think that was an interesting collaborative project, and I'm probably going to get this completely wrong, but about the kind of imaginary retro box art and the games that would be created from that. So talk to us a little bit about Escape, and then how does that nature of collaboration, does that change necessarily how you work and the way you would approach a game?
As in, collaboration. As in, like, the fact that I took, like, the box art.
Did it just kind of inspire you in the way that the art style for the game might be created?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I was feeling very fixated on, like, 2000s kind of aesthetics and games. And then, yeah, seeing that box art, I was like, that's perfect. There's no question about it. I want to make a game based on this. Yeah, I love Escape. I really like it.
Me too. It was, look, it's a lot of fun. And again, all of Olivia's games, well, apart from Surf Club, are available via her itch page. Let's get on to a bit of a different topic, social media. Okay, it's pretty instrumental for how you interact with and reach your audiences, as it is for a lot of young solo developers, with some of your content going quite viral. So we're going to take a quick look at a video that went viral. Was it start of this year? Late last year?
Late last
year? So, tell us a bit about this experience. Good and bad with socials? And have you got any hot tips for people to make the socials work for them?
I guess, when it comes to the TikTok, I guess I'll start with that. It's it was really random. When it happened, my brother said to me, yeah, this is probably one of your worst TikToks. I don't know why it went viral. The text, I didn't think it was very profound what I was saying, because I feel like it's a rhetoric you hear a lot in game spaces of, I'm just doing my thing, I don't care about gamers. But on TikTok, it seemed to reach an audience of, I guess, younger people that had never heard that before, or had even considered that, there could be developers that, just make things as a form of self-expression. So I got so many comments, people saying oh, that's amazing, and, just really very interested in that. So that was a really good experience.
You did have a huge uptick in followers from this, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, that was really weird. I went from 2,000 to 60,000, and I've never heard of getting a lot of followers from a viral video, you know what I mean? So that was really cool. Yeah, I think everyone else, my relationship with social media is very mixed. It has done a lot of good for me, obviously. I wouldn't have a career without it, I don't think, but it's very important to have a healthy balance with it, and to, I guess, set boundaries. Mm-hmm. I've been posting stuff online since I was 12, posting drawings, and I know that just sometimes sometimes things that you don't expect will get attention, will get a lot, and things that you work really hard on sometimes don't. And I know it can just be very unpredictable, so like it's important for me to never let that stuff get to me. It still does sometimes. You know, these apps are like designed to make us feel bad if, you know, we don't get attention, which can be hard to fight. Yeah, overall I am, you know, I am very happy for what social media has given me.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about maintaining that healthy balance then. I mean, do you spend a lot of time reading comments and that, or do you tend to ignore them a little bit more?
I go through phases. Like when something is doing well, like when this TikTok happened, I was like checking a lot, you know, and I was replying a lot, and I was very engaged. And then, yeah, it sort of comes in phases. Like I'll go through phases where like maybe I'll spend a day where I'm just very glued to it, and then I'll like, you know, go through phases where I just really kind of forget to check. And I sort of just try and tune into like how I'm feeling. Like if I feel like I'm struggling with ideas, or I'm feeling a bit more irritated and stressed about my work, I'll try and sort of take a break. Like I do take breaks from like Twitter sort of quite frequently, or I'll just like post stuff and then like leave and not check, you know, the front page or anything. Yeah, I think you just need to be in tune with how you're feeling, and like notice that like if you feel kind of angry after like being on social media, it's like maybe it's, you know, maybe you just should take a little break instead of just being like, why am I on this hell site? Just like actually don't be on it.
I think that's good advice for anyone watching. So the last question I've got for you before we open up to our audience. I want to talk a bit about where you're going as a developer. So obviously you've got like quite a few years now with experience of developing skills in the game development pipeline. Where is that taking you in your career, and how is that helping to shape your practice?
I mean, I think when I started making games, I found it quite difficult to find a workflow that worked for me. Again, like having the whole struggle about like what are my games, but also just figuring out like what kind of structure worked for me, you know. And through making them and through making Surf Club, there's been just a lot of trial and error, but I think now I feel pretty confident in my game making abilities. Like I've figured out what things work for me and what doesn't. And, you know, with Surf Club, I don't expect it to be a huge commercial success, and I don't really mind if it isn't. What I'm hoping with it is that it will, you know, just give me something that I could be really proud of, and that I can show people that, you know, I can make a commercial game. And, you know, I guess I hope that it'll give me a bit of like job security going forward, but also just, yeah, like a cool thing attached to me to remind me that I can do anything. So yeah,
that's great.
I don't know exactly where I'm heading with games.
That's okay. What I'd like to do is open it up to our audience here at ACMI. So if anyone's got any questions, just please raise your hand and we will bring round a microphone for you. I love how polite everyone is.
Thanks. Hi, Liv. Great talk. I'm just curious. So for my job, I teach a lot of young girls game dev skills. And on Monday, I had quite a long talk with a bunch of them about them gaining confidence in posting their work online. And I've been trying to convince them to put their stuff on itch. And I realised that a lot of them are teenage girls, so they're like 14 to 16 kind of age. And a lot of them are really struggling with imposter syndrome, even at that age. And I was wondering if you ever noticed or felt imposter syndrome about posting your own work, and if you had any strategies for overcoming that, because I'm trying to convince these kids to post their work and they're all too scared to do it.
Yeah, I think definitely getting that with like itch.io, because it feels like, oh, you know, this is, you know, people post games here, people are going to download it, it has to be like legit or something. But it's like, I think tell them that I think people don't really care if it's a free game, you know, if it's not perfect. I think, yeah, you just gotta do it. I think you can be really surprised with like itch.io. People are really lovely there. I think, you know, just telling them that it's, I don't know, that's tough. Yeah, just post it like they might be surprised with what happens. Yeah, it's okay.
Next question.
So I've been trying to figure out the wording for this in my brain, and it's not coming together, so you have to be patient with me. Thank you for the talk and for all your great questions as well. I just wanted to ask, as someone who is gained a lot of fame, for lack of a better word, for being such a distinctive aesthetic artist and for having such beautiful games, trying to find that balance moving forward between having a signature style that people really know you for and maybe having compulsions towards doing something different, doing something new, and whether or not that's something that's ever like played in your head or how you view yourself as evolving into the future, if that's ever something that comes up for you, or how you conceive of that as an evolving artist.
Yeah, I think I just kind of try and go with the flow a bit. You know, like in the last couple of years, I feel like I've been very fixated on this kind of art style. And I feel like one day I'll probably exhaust that and then move on to something. But I think if I think too much about, you know, like, is this holding me back? Or like maybe I need to branch out. I think it sort of causes me not to make anything. It's like if I constantly feel drawn to something, I should just try and keep going with that until that urge disappears. Like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Couple over here.
I'm just curious, when you're working on longer projects, do you get to a point where you don't have that passion for it anymore and you kind of hate it and you've got maybe some other ideas and you are just wanting to switch over? And at that point, do you just go with the flow and switch to the thing that's drawing you now, or do you push through to finish what you started?
Yeah, I mean, definitely with Surf Club, it has been that kind of learning process where I have experienced that, yeah, feeling a bit bored of it, or feeling, you know, like I don't want to work on it. And usually I will just take the time out to do something else. Like if I can, like if I don't have any deadlines looming over me, I will just, you know, make a small art piece. Or I made Escape, one of my games, during the time where I was feeling a bit sick of Surf Club. You know, I spent a couple weeks on that, and that was enough to sort of just get that urge out of me. And then I could get back to Surf Club and sort of have a fresh perspective on it. So, yeah, I think I try to make sure I don't get into anything that will be like too time consuming. But, you know, if I spend like a week doing something else, then I think that's fine. And I think it all helps me in the end. Like, just making stuff is always helpful.
Thanks.
No worries.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, sorry. Do you think your experience studying games has affected how you approach your projects these days, or if it hasn't affected it at all?
It's hard to say like where I would be if I didn't study games, but when I look back, I do kind of feel like even though I studied games, it kind of feels like my career began like once I graduated, and I felt like that was when I was sort of like at, what's that phrase called? Like, yeah, I was kind of at the beginning and I had to like go from there. Yeah, I think a lot of the stuff that was like learned in uni, I kind of struggled with, like the sort of project structure that we had to follow. I never felt like it ever suited me, so it was like after graduating and just being with myself and making my own things, I was able to discover what worked for me a bit more. Yeah. Right.
Got some other questions? Please. Okay, I've got a few more rattling around too.
Yeah, you just said so many interesting things. It was, oh wow. Can I sit up there and talk? No, I'm joking.
Maybe next time.
The point you made about that you write everything down as opposed to, well, what you just mentioned there in terms of like coming up with a project structure and all the kind of more, I suppose, like formal ways of doing something or whatever, that translation from written to art to game, what do you think exists in the blank spaces between those 3 points? So when you're writing something down, what are you trying to do, or what do you think is there that then helps you get to the visual thing? And then what's then in the visual thing that helps you get to the 3D quote unquote game experience?
I think the visuals usually come just a bit before the writing, even if it's just very vague. Like sometimes I'll be fixated on like a certain aesthetic or something. Like with the game I made last year, Escape, I was very into like 2000s like aesthetics.
Vibes.
Yeah, so yeah, usually that's sort of the first point where even if it's very vague, I have like a bit of a mood board in my head of what I want something to look like, and then it's like, you know, I'll sort of try and merge like what I'm feeling at the time with that art style. I don't know, it's hard to define like exactly. Yeah. I think it's just a lot of backwards and forwards, like writing a bit and then working on the game a bit, seeing what's not working, removing anything that's not working or adding like more confusion to your idea. I think it's always good to just remove things if it's causing too much stress. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks again.
Hello. Thanks for the talk. It was awesome. My question is, I'm currently struggling with playtesting. How have you designed your way around sorting that situation? Are you like hiring a bunch of people? Are you asking friends? Like, yeah, what's your process?
I'm not the best person to ask when it comes to playtesting, because whenever someone's playtested my room, I've like sort of like run to the other side of the room and go like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. Don't look. Oh my God, this is so awful. I don't know if I'm the best person to ask. I guess just, you know, if there's anything I learned from uni, it's like just listen and don't talk while other people are playtesting. Just take in everything they have to say. Is there anything like sort of specific with playtesting that you're struggling with? Like
just like organizing it is a bit difficult. Like, yeah, I think it's just that.
Yeah.
If I can give a little bit of a plug here, we do have an amazing program called the ACMI and RMIT Audience Lab, which is all about public beta testing and play testing within the museum. So we have a new round of EOIs that are going to be coming out within the next month or so for testing spaces later in the year. So that's an option.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good, honestly.
And it gives you access to like all of the audiences that come through here on a weekend. So and it's a real fun time.
Yeah, maybe that sounds good. Just finding opportunities like that, putting yourself out there.
I have another less profound question. Since you're releasing it like late next year, are you thinking of making merch? Because that game looks very merchable.
Oh, thank you. I really want merch. I do have some ideas.
Nice.
Yeah, I think like a summer themed pack would be good, like a beach towel and like an umbrella and like some swimmers. But we'll see. Who knows? Watch this space.
Oh, wait. You got any other questions?
So just a quick one. What advice would you give to an indie developer who hasn't got a social media presence and they're just starting out today?
Networking, but like networking with the intention of just making friends. I think just going to events and like, you know, listening to what other people have to say. I think people really like that. It makes you sort of stick out in their mind a bit. Like when I sort of started growing my social media presence, it was like at the same time that I was going to more like games events in person and just talking to more people. So I think if I wasn't doing that, I wouldn't have been able to grow on social media in the beginning. So like, yeah, I think just meeting people and just making friends is like a good first step, and then you can all sort of build each other up.
Yeah, cool, thanks.
All right.
Great, we've got time for one or two more questions, if there are any in the audience. Yeah, please.
Hi again, Liv.
Hi, Laura.
Hi. I got another question for you. You were talking a lot about how, especially when you were studying, you'd make these games and people would be like, oh, that can't be a game, it's too short. And it resonated with me a bit because I'm currently studying a master's degree in architecture, so it's a bit different but kind of related. And I'm been getting the feedback a lot of that's not architecture. I think I just keep making games, which is unfortunate for me, but anyway. And I just want to know, how did you get past that feedback from people of that's too short to be a game, and just like have confidence in yourself that, oh no, I'm going to make a short game and it's going to be really good, and it is good. I don't know, I'm currently struggling with like getting past that point of like just not listening to these people. Did you have like any, did you just have to get used to it and just get over it, or?
You gotta believe in yourself. I don't know, that's it. Yeah, I guess you do just kind of have to push through it. I think like take some of it into account. It's always like good to like just listen instead of like blocking out bad like, you know, negative feedback, I guess. But you know, just stick to what you're doing, and like I guess just try and like refine it in any way possible. Like if you are like confident in what you're doing, then you know that'll speak for itself.
Thank you. I'm inspired.
Aw, thank you.
Unless there's any final questions. I do have one last one to wrap up. So, look, given that it's the ACMI and RMIT Games Talk series, there's going to be quite a few students who are of game design who are going to be either watching this tonight or watching this in the future. What would be your one biggest piece of advice for someone studying games right now?
Besides from like networking and making friends in the industry, I think, I don't know, just make stuff. Don't spend too much time like thinking about it, and just, it's always better to just make things instead of just planning things forever, like even if it's not good. I don't know, that sounds really like basic, but I think it's just, you know.
I think it's probably the most important piece of advice for like any artist practicing out there is just make things.
It's not the end of the world if anything's bad or if it doesn't get like attention. It's like, it's good to just keep pushing forward. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Can I please get you all to put your hands together for Olivia Haines? Thank you all for coming to what is now the first ACMI and RMIT Games Talk series, Games Talk of the series. They'll be happening the last Wednesday of the month, up until September. And I can let you know that next month we will be featuring Jake and Narayana from Massive Monster to talk about sound design and Cult of the Lamb, and what is a hotly anticipated game. Again, tickets are free. We'll be streaming it up online, and you can find out all the information on the ACMI website. So on behalf of myself, ACMI and RMIT, thank you again for tuning in and for coming along. Have a good night.